G'day YouTube, warbles on a lot here. Had a bit of a storm last night while I was in town. When I woke up this morning I noticed that the yurt is not quite looking sufficiently yurtish for my liking. So a stitch in time being the theory, absolute first remedial thing in view of the windward horizon bearing lots and lots of clouds. Apply a suitable ladder in order to gain safe access. Pre-cut yourself a patch of the same brand of duct tape that I used to hold a air tractor AT802 together about 15 years ago, and that'll stop the thing from continuing to split straight away while I'm working on it. Yes, I know you're doing a good job. You're going to try and sew it together with spider silk, aren't you? Well, I've got something a bit more technological than that. Step one, part one, is to take recognizance of the fact that that fabric is already split, so it's probably not a good idea to try and sew through it as it is. It's got to be reinforced first with a hem. Okay, well, there's the storm, and there's the duct tape adhesive impromptu hem that's not sticking nearly as well as I hoped it would. However, I think I can probably sew through it without doing too much damage to the fabric, and that's what we're going to try. We will see what we can sew. Okay, one run around the edges just to hold the bloody adhesive tape to the fabric because it doesn't want to stick at first application. And the cloud comes closer over the head. Right, not pretty, but hopefully somewhat effective. I have a feeling that if I put any more stitches in there and poke any more holes through it, it'll just make it worse. And quite a few places like here, you can see where I've had the thread pulling through the fabric. The fabric's basically been rooted by one season of ultraviolet exposure. I suppose it is manufactured in Great Britain. What do pommies know about sunlight in Australia? On the other hand, they did not sell it for permanent residential use. They sold this thing for occasional weekend camping. So just as an attempt at a bit more reinforcement, I think we will go back to the duct tape as one more cover. So one of the reasons I use this particular style of 100-mile-an-hour tape, apart from the fact that it has previously worked on a I think a 1500 horsepower air tractor, I thought it was a pretty fair colour match for the Yurt, but two problems. On the one hand, the Yurt material, the silver fly material, is much worse degraded by ultraviolet than I had thought, to the point where, as you can see, stitches are pulling through. So therefore, I had to use a lot more needle and thread than I expected. And then I discovered that when the sun came off it, the adhesive wasn't quite as sticky. So then I had to go around and rib stitch the edges to basically use thread to hold the sticky tape onto the fabric. So I don't know how successful or otherwise this is going to be. Maybe I should have used the other duct tape, but it's black. And yeah, I still might have to go and get some and put it over the top of those busted stitches. Because the big risk is, of course, that it'll just tear down from these weak points I've just created. So yeah, I'll have to get more sticky tape. So that's not as nice a colour match, but it sticks a hell of a lot better, and I don't need to sew it down to make it stay stuck. Its adhesive is somewhat pressure sensitive, and it tends to be not degraded for at least 6 months in constant exposure to ultraviolet. So the patch should now outlast the rest of the fly, because if the rest of the fabric is as rotted and degraded as the stuff was here that split apart in the wind load, then these ultraviolet summer grade tent flies, rather like the ultralight covers on the pools, they have to be regarded as a consumable annual event, because whereas the pool covers, they last nearly a year unless they get hit by a bad hailstorm, this tent fly, it has lasted one summer precisely, and that's all it's done. At the end of the one summer, it was over, ripped and torn and split asunder by just a little bit of wind, which makes one wonder about the underlying yurt, because it went through maybe 8 months or so, right through the winter, with no fly at all. So anyway, this is what the nest looks like on the underside. And the best of the lot is that I succeeded in sewing the buggered fly back together, sticking it back together, sewing the sticky tape to the buggered fly, and somehow, remarkably, almost miraculously, with all that standing on ladders, playing about with thread and tape and twine, I managed to not accidentally sew the fly to the tent while putting that patch up there. And I think that's not too bad an effort. Warbles on a lot to YouTube, and that was Saturday morning. You have a good one. Ciao.